hiding things, harming others, stopping others from harming you. I'm Thane Riddle. This is Cloak and Dagger.
Hey, what's shaking, Cloak Nation? We got another shoddily thrown together show for you today. So turn on your cloaking devices and sharpen your daggers. We put as little work as we can into this show. We're not making enough money to give you anything more, but this show is better than it has any right to be already. So keep that money flowing. All right, we got the donations coming. We're live on zap.stream. Check us out there and zap us. Or if you're less gay, go to xmrchat.com/PAZNIA radio and tell them Thane sent you. We got the donations flowing. We're gonna if you can donate about 50 times as much per show, then it'll be enough to do the crap that we already do, to make this piece of shit. You want it to be any better, you're gonna have to do better. Today we have the grounded tips. Will be about shrouding again. Way back on my first show, I was talking about shrouding. I was talking about camouflage. Today I'm going to try and talk about being a gray man and maybe disguises. For building the second realm, I'm going to talk about decentralized marketplaces. I said that last week and then I didn't do it, but probably work out this time. And today we have a guest, Gabriel Custodiet, who's my competition. He's a privacy consultant and he does Watchman Privacy podcast. Do not listen to Watchman Privacy podcast. Listen to this show and don't use his services. Use mine. But you can, we thank him. We thank him though for coming on the show, and we'll have a great time with him later. Use him up, milk him for everything he's got, then toss him to the side. And then we're going to have call-ins after 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. Go to PAZNIA.com/call and you can call in and talk to me and Gabriel Custodiet. Let's start with some news. It's thankfully a slow news week here, but I'm going to go on way too long talking about this dumb bullshit anyway. In digital privacy news, there's digital sales tax happening in Canada, like in Europe. And it's well past time, boss, to do business on the net anonymously or pseudonymously and use Monero. The state is only going to get worse and worse when it comes to trying to threaten more and steal more from folks doing business on the net. So get your shit together. In cow health news, or you might say food security news, but let's call it cow health news. There might be a rising parasite outbreak in cows. It's in Mexico for now, I guess. It might not go anywhere, but if it spreads to more cows elsewhere or gets out of hand, it could be bad for the beef supply. If you haven't already, you should link up with nearby farmers who can give you grass-fed beef and milk and stuff like that. The ones that sell raw milk are better, not only because raw milk is cool on its own, but because it tells you something about what kind of farmer you're dealing with. Like raw milk farmers they're just better. They don't like the state as much. They tend to flirt more with the counter economy at the very least. And you want to know these nearby farmers and buy from them before something happens with the shit they sell at the supermarket and everybody else wants to know farmers all of a sudden. And you should hopefully know more than one and hopefully for a long time. Get to know farmers, folks. Whatever. You want to have your own farm. Good luck with that. And there's always going to be something you don't grow yourself. So get to know other farmers. And I guess this is small time thugs news. I should really label this better. There is the Bludgies caught some guys who were linked with a jewelry heist back in May in California or something. Glendale, I guess. I bring this up because this heist was very cool. They cut communication lines and they even did some wireless jamming. Very cool stuff. And it goes to show, folks, if you're going to fuck with folks in the 21st century, get with the times. Folks elsewhere in the world have done things like this, like thugs have jammers in South Africa or whatever, and radical environmentalists have cut calm lines in Europe. But now even dumb small-time thugs in America are doing it. So what excuse do you have? Technology ain't that hard, folks. If you don't have Graphene OS and a Monero wallet, you're getting left behind. These guys had jammers. Those jammers can stop folks from calling the bludgies. They can fuck with Wi-Fi cameras and GPS. Why don't you have a jammer, boss? Think about it. In Germany, there was attacks on folks in swimming pools or something. And in Austria, there was an axe attack on a train. I think it's fishy that they are claiming more than one Syrian refugee has done more than one senseless attack on random folks in Northern Europe, one right after the other. I don't know at all if these are false flags, so to speak. But I know that the state spooks love to stir shit up between racist tards who hate immigrants and SJW tards who think you should suck an immigrant's dick once a day for reparations. It's a cakewalk to stir up these kinds of folks, and they love to hate each other. The state spooks are going hard on this in America, so I bet this little trend in Europe is something like that too. But that's only Thane Riddle's gut feeling, folks, because I truthfully haven't given enough of a shit to look into this further. Either way, you should probably stay away from race baiting events of any kind, anywhere in the Western world right now, because these kinds of false flag looking attacks are happening a lot these days. Also, riots started by agent provocateurs, of course. In Idaho, somebody, I guess, may have set a fire or something to lure firefighters so they could shoot at them. Or I don't know, maybe they didn't set the fire, but either way, somebody shot a firefighter or two. I bring this up only because I think it's something cool to keep in mind. You can manufacture an emergency to lure so-called first responders anywhere you like. It's not only the state that can manufacture emergencies, folks. You can do it too. Of course, the kind of emergency you make will tell you what kinds of first responders are likely to come. What about the bludge, folks? I bet there are all kinds of ways you could make some kind of freak accident happen that will draw a bunch of bludgies to one spot. Lord knows why this guy wanted to lure firefighters, though. Maybe a firefighter fucked his wife or something. Firefighters sure do have a lot of free time on their hands to do things like that because they get a lot of days off. After all, they work very long shifts. And it's very tiring work that they do, you know, taking naps and playing cards at the fire station, stuff like that. Lying around all day truly does make you more tired, folks. It's better for your health to stay busy. That's a tip for you. Don't be like a lazy firefighter. Don't fuck somebody else's wife. Don't get shot. There were some Mexico cartel killings that have been ramping up over the last few weeks. That's still ongoing. I mean, that's not much of a threat. I assume they probably did something to piss off the cartels, but I guess that could happen to anybody in Mexico, especially in some spots if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Here's one. 200 U.S. Marines being sent to Florida, and they say they will send more later. Why do they say this? Well, they say it's to give so-called logistical support to the ICE bludgies. Of course. My gut says that's bullshit. You need logistical support? Call fucking FedEx. You need Marines for logistical support? Yeah, right. Here's what I think could be happening here. Back in June, they declared insurrection in California because of the riots, and they sent Marines to help the National Guard. Then in Texas, they sent Marines in, once again with riots as an excuse. And now they're sending Marines to Florida because what? They feel like it? Like 2 or 3 shows back, I told you I felt like they merely wanted to set the precedent that the feds can send Marines to go after U.S. civilians whenever they feel like it, and that they're pretty much laying the building blocks for like a martial law kind of thing. This latest step in Florida makes it seem even more this way. It seems they're quickly sending Marines to more and more spots around America with weaker and weaker excuses as to why. And I guess they are seeing how far they can take this before somebody says something about it. If you have any fuzzy feelings for insurrectionary agorism, boss, then this is something you want to watch closely. Because these are the folks they will send to fight us. By the time it comes that many of them will have no qualms at all about attacking so-called U.S. civilians. Some of these Marines will also fight for us someday too, so keep that in mind. For now, we should be watching them closely, how they set themselves up, what their supply lines look like, what their strategies and tactics are, and so on. Keeping in mind both sides of the story, that some of them will fight for us, some of them will fight against us. All right. Within the Israeli-Iranian war, not much is happening, as the ceasefire is mostly holding. Like I said before, they are both likely happy to take a break while they restock and rebuild a little. A few small hiccups happened. There was another drone attack in Tehran. It's probably Israel. There was some funny business going on with Iran's western airspace. They reopened it to commercial aircraft for like a few hours, and then they were like, whoops, never mind. And then they closed the airspace again, whatever. Hard to say what was happening, but who cares? Anyway, Iran has been digging into the nuclear plant that the U.S. blew up, and they say it was hurt pretty bad. I guess that's likely true, but they also said they're going to keep on keeping on when it comes to building their nuclear independence, which is also likely true. They have other underground plants and more enriched uranium. Meanwhile, Israel violated their other ceasefire in Lebanon, carrying out one of the hardest attacks there in many months. Yeah, what else is new? Whatever. Russia made some big attack on the Ukraine, blah, blah, who cares? There's been a war in Ukraine for 15 years now or something? And since Russia stepped in, they talk about it way too much, so it's pretty tiresome, boss. That's why I don't talk about Ukraine much. Slap a big strip of masking tape over the whole Ukraine calendar for the last 10 years and write war on it, and we're done. Let's leave it at that. You should be worried if you're in Eastern Europe, though, because it won't stop at the Ukraine, and it will be much worse when World War III is happening. Let me quickly touch on North Korea here. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening with North Korea. They will never willingly stop their nuclear program, and they likely won't attack anybody yet. But one day it will happen, and it'll be a big deal when it does, maybe. South Korea and Japan are right to be worried about North Korea, as they will likely be attacked. Namely, South Korea will be attacked. And when they hit South Korea, they'll hit U.S. soldiers who are still there, and then the U.S. will hit North Korea back because of the U.S. casualties. This is the most likely way World War III will start in earnest, and it's the most likely way nuclear war will start. But it's not happening yet. I think you still have more time. But who knows? Could be next year, could be 5 years from now. Hopefully not sooner than a year, but who knows? Long story short, nothing's happening with North Korea right now. But since they're coming up in the news, you should maybe watch it anyway, because North Korea is the most likely trigger for a nuclear World War III. So my ears perk up a little when they're in the news, though it's almost always a nothing burger, which is what it is right now. North Korea's greatest contribution to being in the news for the last few decades is pretty much just Kim Jong-il being in Team America World Police as a puppet. That's a funny movie. That's it for news. Thank God that's over. Imagine actually finishing the news on time for once. If you have any hot news for me that you think I might not know about, whether it's to do with incoming threats or something cool with privacy or security, please do reach out to me. Let me know. You can go to VonuPodcast.com/CD or PAZNIA.com/radio to find my session ID and SimpleX address. Are you tired of hearing me read the same ads all the time? Begging and screaming for me to stop? Well, I won't stop, however much you may beg and sob and thrash at the walls. But I don't want to do it either, and if you want me to stop, you must give me what I want, what we both want. Tell me about your product or service that you would like me to advertise instead. It likely won't cost you much to get me to butcher your ad read on this show. You're getting in on the ground floor here, folks, and that ad will last forever. What if more folks listen to this show later and they go back and listen to the one that has your ad? That's what they call evergreen content, folks. Reach out to me by session, SimpleX, or maybe email or something. VonuPodcast.com/CD. Does your body hurt? Then you should try Pain Liberator, It's a thing that you spray on yourself. It's 20% DMSO with a base of colloidal silver water, magnesium, and aspirin. Great for most any kind of pain. Sprained ankle, sore back, headaches, toothache, jaw pain. Because you're keeping your, I don't know what you're doing all the time. You have to keep your jaw open for a while, and you're moving it back and forth and stuff. I don't need to ask why, but your jaw aches. Spray this on. It's got DMSO and aspirin on their own. They're quite miraculous, each on its own. But when put together in Pain Liberator, it's fucking magical. Go to libertyunderattack.com/pain Thane. And I don't know, maybe you get a discount or something. Maybe they should tell me. I actually never questioned that before. In any case, I get commission. So go to libertyunderattack.com/pain Thane. Buy some Pain Liberator. It's truly one of the best things for pain in the world. And there's like no other product like it. No competition. So you should go there and get that 360 win. Do you want to officially join the second realm? However silly that may sound, you can officially join the second realm and get discounts on other hustles in the Agora, more access to the PAZNIA network, an elite organization of chads that get laid every other day, and maybe even some free PAZNIA merch. Go to PAZNIA.com/Thane to check out all the perks of becoming an honorary stakeholder and put in a coupon code Thane to get $25 off. And on the PAZNIA radio network, which is what you're listening to right now, on the first and third Mondays at 7 p.m. Central, Richard Greaser will take over the Second Realm airwaves for Music Monday. He's a credentialed journalist and award-winning songwriter and a connoisseur of non-KYC cigarettes. He's going to take you through a tour of deep tracks and all that crap, music, and so forth. Would you like to be preached to as the choir is preached to about your libertarian values, but through the form of music, choir music, you might say? Take a look at Music Mondays, especially on the first and third of every month at 7 p.m. Central for Dick Greaser's Dick Greasing hour or 2 hours or whatever. I don't know. Does that show have a name? I don't know. It's just his Music Monday. Go to PAZNIA.com/radio to find links to stream on YouTube, Odyssey, Zap.stream, and Rumble. Now I'm supposed to talk to you about fucking... I'm supposed to give you your down-to-earth tip today. Bear with me for a moment, folks. I have all sorts of passwords here in my vault. I got to go through different doors and stuff, and I have to like put my eyeball up to something that scans it. One of my many eyeballs. So on the first show, I talked to you about shrouding, which is what I call ways of covering yourself up to like be physically hidden when someone looks at you type of thing. And I talked about camouflage, and I ran out of time. I managed to blab enough and run out of time. So I didn't get to the gray man and the disguise parts. And now I'm going to do that. And hopefully I have enough. I'll try and talk real slowly so that the time runs out and you can imagine that I had more, but that I just didn't have enough time to say it. So I'll talk about the gray man. You may have heard this before, being a gray man. This is all about being boring and easily forgotten. It applies to more than just how you dress, but here we're going to focus on how you dress. You wear what most folks around you seem to wear. Namely, if folks with sundry jobs and incomes all seem to wear the same thing, that's a good thing to wear then. You wear clothes that you wear like colors that a lot of folks wear, and you stay away from odd markings and such as brand names and logos. You walk the tightrope between covering yourself up and looking shady. After all, looking like you have something to hide makes you less boring. And this makes it harder to hide. Sometimes it's good to think like this. What if, when you go out today, something bad happens? Or just something you didn't think was going to happen. And afterward, somebody is following up on something you did, trying to find you. Like, say, the bludgies, Or what if something odd merely happened near you and you were in the wrong spot at the wrong time? They may ask folks about you, what you looked like, how you spoke, things like that. They watch camera footage if they can find any. Think about these things because you might go on camera footage today or be seen by people today and not know that something's about to happen. You won't know that it's about to happen a lot of the time until it's already happened. And it might be something real sexy and crazy, like you have to shoot somebody. Or it might be something, it's probably something way stupider than that. But it can lead to people looking into you, trying to figure out, quote unquote, who you were, whatever that means. More to the point, where you are and how to talk to you or do something bad to you. You don't want that. So think about that. How can you make this job harder for them? What is the shittiest, least helpful evidence that you can leave behind? Maybe you don't want to do something that the bludgies will be looking into later, and that's good, but it might happen anyway. So please think about what you're picking to wear today. You don't know what will happen when you go out there. Today could be the day. A few clothes that might work all right in most of the world today. This really, really rests upon where you are, dude. Like this really, some places people don't dress like this at all, but I'll give you some. How about this? Black, but not too much black. I talked in the camouflage thing. I talked about how black is sort of in the overlap between camouflage and gray man, because black is a color that people in a lot of the world wear a lot, and it matches everything. And it also sort of blends into every environment because all environments have shadows. But if you wear too much black, like if you're in black head to toe, it might look weird, maybe, depending. Like, I don't know, the kids seem to do that these days a little bit, so it's not as weird. It depends what you're wearing. Blue jeans, that's a real good one. Even in third world countries, they're wearing fucking blue jeans. They're wearing blue jeans all over the place. How about this one? T-shirt. That's a common one, like just a solid colored t-shirt with nothing on it. How about a hoodie? That's a good one. How about a baseball cap? That's something that can obscure your face, especially from overhead cameras, at least a little bit. Sunglasses. I mean, if you have your sunglasses on or baseball cap on and your hood up, you know, you kind of look like the Unabomber. Might look shady, but well, I don't know. Maybe it's cold and put the hood down. Maybe it looks a little less shady. I don't know. You're gonna have to figure that shit out for yourself. And yeah, people of different incomes wear these things. Like jeans. Jeans started out as like a working class thing, and they're still worn by blue collar workers, but they're even worn by office workers a lot of the time now. They do like a business casual thing, and they're worn by, you know, all kinds of people who are unemployed. Kids. Hoodies are kind of like that too. You know, these are popular things. You should mostly stay away from fancy suits and fancy clothes when your goal is to be a gray man. Same thing with looking too poor or shabby. Most of the time, both of these things can catch somebody's eye in one way or another, and you want it to be hard for somebody to put their finger on what kind of nigga you might be. And yet you want to look so boring that nobody cares to wonder about it anyway. Of course, there are times when you want to look like a fancy office worker or like a poor person, but that's more of a disguise than a gray man. Unless there's a lot of that type of person around, then maybe it becomes a gray man. As you can likely tell, you need to think about what kind of spot you're going to be in. What folks tend to dress like they're, how they look at things. And I'll talk to you about disguises. Hopefully I'll run out of material right on time. A disguise is what you need when you must be seen and can't be boring. So, okay, your first pick is don't be seen at all. That's camouflage. Your next pick is, okay, you are going to be seen as like a guy or something walking around, but you can be boring. And then finally, there's, well, I have to be seen and I can't be boring. I might have to do something weird that's not that boring. This is where a disguise often comes in. Or, you know, you have to do something that calls for a disguise. A few reasons you might want to have a disguise, why you might be in a disguise. You want to ask somebody to do something that could seem shady. So you wear a nice suit or something to match the story you created to put them at ease. There's a story like that or a tip like that that brings to mind it's a great book called How to Be Invisible by J.J. Luna. And he gives you a case of like, okay, here's one way you can get a ghost address, right? A ghost address is a place where you can get mail. And he's like, you roll up in a suit in a fancy car at some place renting office space or something. And you act like you might be interested in renting a unit, and you talk to them for a while. You can get them to like you. That's something I'll talk about another time. Charm, getting people to like you, because it's actually a big deal for security and hiding stuff, and really just life in general. But you afterwards, after that whole fucking game of pretending to be someone else and pretending to want something else and getting someone to like you, that's when you walk away. And as if it's an afterthought, you turn around and go, oh, hold on. I have an idea. You know, I have to visit this town often for meetings or whatever, but I don't live here. I could use so I've been trying to get a mailing address around here. Maybe we could work something out where I just get mail here. And then, you know, they'll be much more interested because of how you dressed, because your stupid disguise matched your story. And it's way better than some shady person walking in and asking the same thing. Of course, these days, since J.J. Luna wrote that book, we have something called co-working spaces, and they already do that, where they just rent out mailing addresses, and that's actually like a normal thing now. But sometimes you can get it to happen somewhere where they don't normally do that. You want to get into somewhere you're not allowed in a commercial property. So you dress like a blue-collar contractor. This is a big one. If you have to get into some weird place in an office building, one of the best things to do is just wear like a high-vis vest and have a hard hat that you look like you never want to wear. It looks like you only put it on when you're forced to, because that's what normal blue-collar workers do. And maybe you know about some work that's being done there, so you say, oh, I'm here with blah, 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 the name of that company. If somebody asks you, just sort of walk in there. Here's another one. This is obvious. You're going to do something that'll bring heat. So you put on a mask. You darken your skin with makeup and talk like a Vato or something. Talk like a Jamaican guy. If you could pretend to be a minority, and you can fool people. If you're even halfway all right at this, the bludgies won't think twice. They really are biased towards thinking minorities committed crimes. To be fair, it's because they do a lot. Here's one. Whoops. You need to run. You didn't plan to run, but you need to run. Well, guess what? If you have a few little things on you, you get out of sight fast, take a few turns, remove a bit of clothing, slap on a fake mustache, make a funny face, make it look like you have a different face, walk calmly into a line for an ice cream truck or something like that. How about that? Just take off your jacket, tie around your waist, put on the fake mustache, make a funny face, just stand in line somewhere. And just act like you're not running. Most people, even if like it was seconds ago, people running after you saw you, they won't see you and they'll run right past you. You can blend in. Sometimes carrying a little disguise thing, or even just changing your clothes up a little bit, taking something off, putting something on. That too is a disguise. Even a small change is a disguise. Even making a face is a disguise. Here's a few kinds of disguises that are good to have around. They work for a lot of different things. Homeless. This is great. Have some clothes that are dirty, ill-fitting clothes. It's even better if you have some way to smell bad a little bit. It should look like, you're in and out of shelters and you get clothes that were donated, so they don't fit you that well and they're dirty because you don't change them. Looking homeless is sometimes really helpful, believe it or not. Here's one. Hunter. Wear too much Realtree camo. Maybe roll in driving an ATV. Warning, if you dress like a hunter, everybody knows that you have a gun. Everybody knows that the guy with the Realtree on the ATV has a gun, just so you know. Here's another one. Cowboy. You got the Western shirt, got the cowboy boots and the hat, Christian necklace. Once again, everyone knows you have a gun. If you look like that, you have a gun. Here's another one. Blue collar. You need scuffed up safety boots. Okay. Safety boots that look like they've actually been used for work. They get scuffed up a lot. You want loose clothes that are worn looking or stained with like paint or something. High vis vest. And once again, a hard hat that you don't wear and try to look tired. Here's one. Woodsman. Hiking gear. Flannel. You look like someone who goes camping. May or may not have a gun. Business casual. Khakis and a polo. That's great. Look like you're going golfing or something. And then, of course, the business outfit. Everyone should have some kind of sharp suit, dress shirt, dress shoes, or at least, whatever, sports coat and dress pants, whatever. Get that shit tailored. Because, everyone cleans up nice enough. And sometimes that's a powerful thing, man. Sometimes that's a powerful thing. If you've never had a woman in a baby carriage smile at you, just dress like Mr. Rogers. Throw on some glasses. You don't need glasses to see whatever. They can just be no prescription. Throw on some glasses. Slick your hair. Look like Peter Woodcock. Look up a picture of Peter Woodcock. He's a serial killer who raped and killed little boys, and everyone thought he was so nice, such a sweet boy. Take a note from that guy's book, where it put on some glasses, look like Mr. Rogers, smile. You'll have multiple women pushing baby carriages smiling at you within minutes of walking out the door. Guaranteed or your money back. Think about carrying one or more of these in your bag. A shirt or something that's a color you're not wearing at all. Think about that one. A color that's way different from anything you have on. Throw that shit on after turning one of those corners, and it will make people hesitate to think that you're the same guy. High vis vest. I keep bringing this up. Take my word for it. High vis vest packs down real small. It's easy to carry. You put it on over almost anything, and it looks like you have some reason to be there wherever you are, like you're working, or as long as what you have underneath isn't too crazy. I've seen homeless guys who clearly look homeless under a high vis vest. Sometimes they put that on to pick up like fucking tin cans and whatever, soda cans and stuff, so they can recycle them for drinking money. Glasses, other than the ones that you're already wearing. If you're wearing some, change your glasses. And how about a signal mirror? A signal mirror is good for survival. It's good. It's a good EDC anyway. It doesn't break as easily as a normal mirror. But you can use it to look at yourself, which can help you sometimes with a quick disguise. And of course, you can have like a wig, a hair tie, fake facial hair. You want to go crazy, have a portable electric razor or some makeup or something. You might be shocked with an efficient setup. You can look pretty differently, pretty quickly. And there we go. I've used up enough time. That worked out okay. Hopefully that didn't sound too retarded. Hopefully that didn't sound retarded at all. Hopefully I sounded like I knew what I was talking about and you're entertained. Do you want a more secure and private phone, tablet, or laptop, but you don't want to do the work yourself? Go to libertyunderattack.com/Thane. There's Pixel 7 privacy phones with Graphene OS or Calyx OS, ThinkPads with neutralized Intel Management Engine, open source firmware, and whatever Linux OS you like. And I think they have tablets. Go to fucking libertyunderattack.com/Thane. And if you want to ask anything about these goodies or you want them to do a custom job for you, something's not in stock, they can still do it. Email Shane at libertyunderattack.com. SHAENE at libertyunderattack.com. Trust me, folks, it's not easy to neutralize the IME and flash your own firmware to a laptop. And you do want this on your laptop. Save yourself the trouble. Go to libertyunderattack.com/Thane. Support the Second Realm. Support PAZNIA. Support yourself. 360 something. Okay. We got fan mail. I got another donation, a bigger donation. One of the biggest donations in the history, in the storied history of this great network, which has received some huge donations from high rollers. This is one of the biggest there's ever been. And it's a donor that we got last week called Thought Crime Boss. He went on xmrchat.com/PAZNIA radio, folks, and he mentioned Thane in his comment. And that's what you can do too to get your message immortalized and for people to know that you did something amazing and heroic. People are going to love you. Thought Crime Boss said this week with his donation, "Keep the episodes coming, Mr. Thane, that rhymes with Shane, but is definitely not Shane Riddle. This tip should fund your operation for at least like 10 minutes or something." That is not a bad estimate, Thought Crime Boss. I feel like, yeah, that could be about right for 10 minutes. It's not far off from what I charge for consulting for 10 minutes of consulting, which doesn't happen too often. Yeah, all we need is 50 times that donation every fucking episode. And then it'll be worth it for us to do this shitty job that we already do. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the money and the love and affection. And I know you have more of both. So keep it coming. I'm going to milk you for all you got, Thought Crime Boss. Keep it coming. Why don't you put an advertisement for your OnlyFans or something in the next comment? If you have any thoughts said on anything said on the show, or you want to ask anything, please send it in and I'll likely answer you on next week's show. If you'd rather call in and speak with us live, you can call in soon, like in a little less than an hour, at PAZNIA.com/call. And if you want to donate, you can check out our stream on zap.stream to donate Bitcoin via Lightning, or you can do as Thought Crime Boss did, which is much cooler. Donate Monero at xmrchat.com/PAZNIA radio and mention me, Thane, somehow in your donation. All right. Let's get this crap over with. I'm going to talk for the building the second realm topic. I'm going to do the one that I meant to do last week. I'm going to talk about decentralized marketplaces. So marketplaces, you might have heard of them. They're a big deal. You're some sort of market anarchist, agorist, anarcho-capitalist, whatever. So you're jerking off over markets all the time, buying and selling things. It's a big deal. It's how the world goes around. And fuck yeah, it's a pretty big fucking deal, isn't it? But everyone does it wrong. Doing it online is a big deal, right? You need to do it remotely. That's the way of the 21st century. You're not there in the same spot at the same time. You're going to ship something over or perform a digital service like me. A lot of it's done through centralized services. I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Everything's fucking done through centralized services, and they're fucked. and it's bad, or rather, it was a necessary evil that we need to get away from as we get deeper into this century. Now, you know the pitfalls with centralized services. They can be threatened by bludgies. They can stop anything they want. They know too much, and they track everything. It's very bad for folks' privacy. Knowing everything you buy, where it's going, how much you spend on what you're selling, how much you're selling, that's information that could be used for tax purposes. And of course, they could even go down. Service could go down, stop working. Whoops. There goes your fucking livelihood. Maybe they'll just ban you. You go fuck yourself. So one big thing that has happened that you probably know about is darknet markets. Now, darknet markets are a big deal, and they're better in many ways. But for the most part, they're still centralized. They're still fucking centralized. So they have a lot of the same problems. Now, the big boon with darknet markets is and of course, when I say darknet, what even is a darknet? If you don't mind, boss, please don't say deep web or something. That's stupid. Makes you sound like somebody who just saw the iceberg meme or whatever. It sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. Say darknet. That's the right word. Darknet it's a network, a digital network that obfuscates where things are coming from and going to. So it's, shit can be more private, at least on the network level. It doesn't stop you from leaking stuff. You can still get on the darknet and say, hey, I like to fuck kids and build bombs, and I live on this address or whatever. And you could say that on an IRC channel on Tor or on a forum on Tor. Nothing stops you from doing that. But anyway, darknet markets do make it harder to find out where the servers are or who's running them. So it's harder for bludgies to threaten them or stop them. But yeah, darknets aren't a magic bullet. And those who run big darknet markets need very good cybersecurity and operational security on top of being on a darknet, because they're still very big targets for both hackers and bludgies. And they still get caught every now and then. Now, one of the top ways a darknet market comes to an end isn't getting shut down by bludgies at all. It's something called a rug pull or an exit scam. You see, almost every centralized darknet market holds cryptocurrency in escrow for its users while sales made on the website are pending fulfillment. This is one way of lessening the need for buyers and sellers to trust each other, but it leads to another pitfall, which is trusting the one holding your funds in escrow, which here is the darknet market itself. This kind of threat is sometimes called third-party risk. Anyway, at any given time, a darknet market has a big pot of cryptocurrency being held in escrow for all the deals happening on their site. And after, I don't know, maybe 2 to 5 years or so of a centralized darknet market doing very well and getting very big, this pot of cryptocurrency can get very, very big. We're talking like over 10 million US dollars worth. Now that's retirement money, boss. And when you're running a centralized darknet market for years, you feel the bludgies breathing down your back and the pot gets that big. That's the very thought that crosses your mind. Time for retirement. So all they have to do is shut down the market and walk away with the crypto that was in escrow. So many big centralized darknet markets go poof one day out of nowhere. And most folks think this is what's happening. Now these days, some big darknet markets allow you to make multi-sig wallets for transactions instead of escrow. This sort of decentralizes the escrow or something like escrow more, and it's most assuredly the better way. And if you do it with a multi-sig wallet, then the darknet market cannot walk away with your crypto. The way a multi-sig wallet works is, the buyer and the seller put their keys together, and the darknet market might come in and put a third key in or something, and make a multi-sig wallet. And let's say let's say you and the seller and the market put their keys together to make a multi-sig wallet. And you need 2 out of 3 of you to sign a transaction to move funds away from the wallet. So you can send the seller or the buyer can send money to the wallet. And it's kind of like it being an escrow, except no one person has control over it. So that way, everything goes fine. The buyer and seller agree that the funds should be released to the seller. So they both sign the transaction that sends it to the seller's address. If there's a dispute, then that's where the darknet market comes in as a dispute resolver, as an arbitrator, and they can use their third key along with either the buyer or seller's key to sign some other transaction that does whatever. Of course, the multi-sig option doesn't stop many folks from going with the centralized escrow thing instead, and that's why darknet markets are still exit scamming, even though a lot of them now support multi-sig wallets. Maybe we need to make multi-sig wallets more user-friendly or something. Here's another pitfall of darknet market centralization. It's kind of a cross between a rug pull and getting caught by the bludgies. You see, some big darknet markets these days are outright run by the bludgies to start with. So when the bludgies are done with it, they merely lie and say that they caught the folks running it. And they're pretty much pulling an exit scam too, because they're taking the crypto for themselves. Lately, Archetype Market went down, and the bludgies made this silly video about how great they are and how hard they work to catch the folks running it. They're so smart and everything. Yeah, gee, boss, what do you think? I think it's more likely they ran Archetype Market themselves, but who knows? And let's not forget, even before a centralized darknet market comes to an end, it can fuck with its users in other ways. For one, most darknet markets won't let you sell anything on there. When it comes to drugs, you can do whatever you want, but besides that, they get squeamish. Many of them won't let you sell guns, for one, which is fucking gay as hell. Guns are way better than faggot-ass drugs. After all, a little violence is the ultimate drug, in the words of Slayer. Anyway, boss, as you can tell, a centralized darknet market may have more privacy, but it still has all the pitfalls of centralization. It can censor you, it can go down, and even though the deals are made with Monero and the messages are encrypted with PGP, they still have a lot of metadata about what's going on, and that's not great, especially when you take into mind that they're being run by the fucking bludgies to begin with. So they're doing something bad with that metadata, I think. So of course, what we want is one or more decentralized markets. And believe it or not, this is something that has kind of been done a little bit, though it hasn't quite taken off as much as I'd like. I'll talk a little about what's been done so far. I'm sure there's something I don't know about, but I'll touch a little on what's been done so far that I know about. When it comes to decentralized marketplaces, the most ground has been covered in cryptocurrency exchanges. Decentralized exchanges, or DEXs, have gotten pretty big. It's a big thing. You have big DEXs that work with like faggy Ethereum smart contracts and shit, like Uniswap or whatever. And you have kind of off-chain P2P cryptocurrency markets, like RitoSwap for Monero and BISC for Bitcoin. These things are pretty cool, but I think there will be much better ways to do this in the coming years. They each have their own little quirks and pitfalls. Like some DEXs are not as decentralized as they should be, or whatever. Like RitoSwap and BISC are cool, but they can be kind of clunky. And of course, where you run into privacy problems is the fiat currency side. But whatever, it's up to the users to deal with that, and I get that. But what about a fucking overall marketplace, like where you can buy and sell anything, not only cryptocurrency? That's a big deal, right? If we had something like that was decentralized, no one could stop it. You could do whatever you want. No one can do anything about it. Well, folks have kind of tried to build stuff like this too. There was something called Open Bazaar, which was very cool, but it was held back by frankly kind of shitty protocol design, and by being married to Bitcoin too much, and by putting everything into a clunky desktop client instead of a sleek mobile client or web client. And the timing was bad because smart contracts took off after they started it and stuff, and it just kind of didn't work out. And so OpenBazaar is not really being worked on anymore, as far as I know. So what's decentralization look like going forward? You know, I mean, I don't think it looks like OpenBazaar, to be truthful. I'm not going to get into the weeds about what OpenBazaar was like, but based on my talks with people who are into, like the people I talked about who want to build mesh networks and shit, which you can talk to in the various PAZNIA chats and shit. I think decentralization for marketplaces looks something like, and I mean, maybe this is a little somewhere between technical and philosophical, but I think that the very thought of buying something, selling something, etc., I think that needs to be abstracted into something like elemental, and modules should be built from the ground up that are like totally agnostic to the way to what kind of transaction it is. Like you want a really high level protocol that could ultimately be configured to work for selling drugs, doing a Craigslist type listing, trying to find a ride from someone like Uber, ordering food, renting space. What's another weird example? How about an activity partner? How about a transaction where money's not even involved? Barter shouldn't be married to anyone. Cryptocurrency or currency shouldn't be married to any kind of transaction. It should be abstract from the ground up. That's what I think. And once again, it's something that probably works chainlessly. I know that on Holochain, there's stuff happening. I talked about Holochain before. Holochain is a chainless protocol for building decentralized applications. And there's something called, I think it's called value flows. And it's not to do with Holochain itself, but people have implemented it on Holochain. Value flows is like, it's kind of like what I'm talking about. Come to think of it, it's like an abstract language for economic activity, and it replaces. It's envisioned as the next step after double entry accounting. Like it's a whole other way of representing economic activity, and I think it could make all kinds of economic activity programmable and stuff in like cool ways. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but yeah, maybe building with something like value flows, and maybe Holochain possibly could be. And once again, I think, like I've said, I talked before about I've sort of laid the groundwork with my other talks on building the second realm, right? You got decentralized, you got distributed data storage, you got mesh networking, and maybe secure distributed computing if needed. Those three can be used to make anything. They can be used to make a marketplace too. If you have, like, let's say a chainless data storage protocol that's properly incentivized or monetized or whatever you want to say, tokenized, I like to say, then you could, I mean, a marketplace could pretty much just be some crap that you put on a data store, and it could be on a low level in value flows language, like offering this, looking for that, with these terms, Now it could have a user-friendly interface, but at the end of the day, it'll have like a basic machine readable language to it. That's where I kind of think the future is. Maybe that sounds kind of technical or philosophical or weird to you, but I think it's actually a big deal to do it like that. Maybe it's just a gut feeling. There's a lot of weird subtleties here. There's a lot of weird shit you'll be able to do with decentralized marketplaces. They range from obvious to not so obvious. Like, okay, you're thinking about buying and selling shit like you do on eBay or something. But how about stuff that I'll talk about on a later show, like having a non-aggression smart contract and making that a requirement for doing certain deals? How about having a decentralized arbitration system? It's a service that's bought and sold and can be bought and sold automatically by smart contracts. How about bonding and insurance for all kinds of things, insurance for breaking the law? How about decentralized security, protection companies, insurrectionary agorism boss? This is the foundation for that, or at least for the future version of that. Frankly, you don't need any technology to do that stuff, and it's been done before. But whatever. That's what I think. I think that shit's important. Hopefully that didn't just sound like a bunch of gobbledygook to you. If you want to work on stuff like this, decentralized marketplaces, mesh networking, distributed data store, blah, blah, blah. If you want to work on stuff like that in any capacity, even if you think you're retarded, don't know what you're doing, and you want to link up with others who do, talk to me. Go to fucking VonuPodcast.com/CD. Reach out to me on Session or Simplex or something, and I'll link you up with those people. They're already talking now about mesh networking. Someone came because of the show, so that's good. I've done something good. And you can ask anything in around a half hour by calling in PAZNIA.com/call, or send in some fan mail. And don't forget to give me your money. Do you want to support the show and the rest of the PAZNIA radio network? You can buy some PAZNIA merch at PAZNIA.com/shop. But we're also taking Monero donations at xmrchat.com/PAZNIA radio. Please leave a note saying Thane sent you, so that I can join in the embezzlement of the funds. And if you're a Bitcoin maxi or something, you can go to zap.stream and zap us there, silly. Support the show. That gives you great privacy and security knowledge and wisdom, and thus support yourself. That's what I call a 360 win, folks. I invented that. And don't forget, folks, you can also join the second realm and get discounts on other hustles in the Agora, more access to the PAZNIA network, and maybe even some merch. Go to PAZNIA.com/Thane and put in coupon code Thane to get $25 off an Honor stakeholder membership. Don't forget to tune into the PAZNIA radio network on the first and third Mondays of every month at 7 p.m. Central for Richard Greaser's Music Monday show. All the true fans call him the Dick Greaser, folks. 360 win. PAZNIA.com/radio. Find links to the streams. Don't forget, boss, in a half hour, we'll be taking call-ins. And I believe our guest will be here for those call-ins. You can go to PAZNIA.com/call in a half hour when we start taking call-ins. And I'm going to introduce this guy who's a guest, closest thing to a real guest we've had, because he's kind of one of us, but he's not as one of us as one of the other guests. So we've come of age. We've come of age, boss. Gabriel Custodiet, who is my competition in two ways, as he is both a privacy consultant and somebody with a privacy show. So after this show is over, please forget about him forever. But for now, we're going to welcome him warmly, to his face at least. So please give it up for Gabriel Custodiet, everybody.
Well, hello. It looks like I have at least 60 minutes to make an impression. So there we go. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. You know, I'm just doing my show right now, which, you know, it's always kind of tiring. But besides that, it's fine.
I have an energy drink here. It's just one of those sleepy Saturdays, and let's see what we can get up to. I have no clue what you're about to ask me.
Me neither. So we're in the same boat.
There we go.
You can start by telling them who you are.
I host a podcast called Watchman Privacy, which you're not going to subscribe to, so it doesn't really matter. And I just talk about all manner of things related to privacy, not just digital privacy, physical privacy, and have branched out to philosophy and contrarian investing and all these sorts of things, and accumulated a few people who are interested in these things. We talk about Monero. We talk about Bitcoin back when it was possible to make it private. We still talk about it a little bit these days and how it's failed mostly in that regard anyway. And we kind of talk about things that some other people don't really talk about. I was reading a lot of Michael Bazel's stuff. He really never talked about cryptocurrency. And some of these other people out there, they don't talk about particular things that I think they should be talking about. So I kind of came in wanting to discuss these things, whether that's crypto or torrenting or whatever the topic was. I figured these things needed to be talked about, and that's why I started the show. And it's Watchman Privacy, not that you're going to subscribe to that, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I totally feel where you're coming from there. Mike Bazel's a little bit of a faggot. He, right in the beginning of his book, he brags that he snitched on somebody who came to him for privacy consulting.
That is true.
That motherfucker should disappear. He should really disappear, like a real privacy consultant.
Well, he has. He actually complained on the way out too. The only way he gets the news out is in these snippy little Twitter posts, and which basically are linking back to his blog, and he has everybody blocked on Twitter, or at least people can't respond except a few approved people. And basically he came out in the last couple of weeks and he said, yeah, the only thing we were doing was our books. That's literally all he's doing now is his books. And we're going to stop those too because of piracy. We're not blaming anybody. That's just the state of the world. So we're not going to do anymore. I'm like, dude, first of all, you have a website that doesn't accept any crypto. And I know people who are never going to buy things if they can't pay in, Monero or Bitcoin, especially if it's privacy focused people. And so he has this Stripe gateway that people are forced to go through to get their books, which have a little bit of DRM in them. And so I'm like, dude, like you could just change a few things, stop complaining, embrace the piracy, because that's always going to happen, and just keep doing stuff that's really what you want to do. But he's always been a little bit of a complainer. And I like some of the strategies he comes up with, but in general, not a huge fan of some of his other stuff.
Yeah, the listener should pirate Extreme Privacy by Mike Bazel. That's definitely a good book. But yeah, it doesn't cover everything, and he's a little bit of a fag. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he made his money already. He was the consultant for Mr. Robot or whatever, and maybe he's just like, whatever. I'm just gonna go on retreats in the woods now, and I don't know. Maybe he doesn't care anymore.
I don't think he cares anymore. I think he's either made his money, or he talked in the end about advising companies on anti-ransomware protections and things of the sort. He probably has some celebrities. I'm just guessing here. Some celebrities and wealthy people who
he bragged about it in his book.
Right, he does, and he's talked about that. So I figure he does not need to be talking to the public, and in fact, maybe as part of his consulting, he's been asked not to talk about these things. So that's probably the state that he's in. But Extreme Privacy is certainly a book that everybody should be reading.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you said something about contrarian investing. Tell me what that is.
Well, this was my latest episode, and basically just to point out that I'm branching out more broadly. And so let's talk about contrarian investing, right? So you get into certain groups, let's say extreme privacy groups, and you start to get people who can be very, let's say, communistically anarchic, which I think is a contradiction. But I'm sure you know the kinds of people I'm talking about.
They say the same thing about us, though, of course.
Exactly. And so my thing has always been, and you get a lot of these doom people as well in certain groups like this, the economy, it's going to crash. And they've been saying that since, 20, 30 years, and it hasn't crashed. And so my a little bit contrarian view has been and continues to be, there's no reason why you can't profit from the current state of things. The economy is screwy, we know that, but modern monetary theory is black magic. and it works, right? And it is stretching this thing along here, and the inflation and the money printing and all the rest in the debt based system that we have. This stuff is keeping going, and if you've been out of it for the last 20 years, let's just say you've missed a huge opportunity for wealth accumulation. So I just think that people should consider not completely stepping out of the system. Maybe have a foot in, and you can do things like you could think about investing in commodity. If you think inflation is going up, that means that you can invest in those commodities, and when their price goes up, you likewise become rich. So that's kind of contrarian investing. Is you can still have the mindset that a lot of people in this community have, whether you're an anarchist, an anarchist or what have you, and see things going to ruin. And you can invest in different countries. You can invest, as I say, in commodities, uranium, gold mining companies, things of this sort. And as long as you don't get rug pulled and you get that money out before the great taking or whatever's going to happen, you could be the next, the next rulers of the world if you wanted to. Or instead of being a ruler of the world, have the money to do a lot of good, obviously.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think whether someone works within the system or outside of it, which is what I like better, either way, you can make money off of even while things are crashing and certain things are happening. You can make a lot of money. There's a lot of opportunity in these bad things happening. I agree with that. Now, this is kind of an awkward thing to ask. I mean, like me as a privacy consultant, when people ask me this, it's always weird because there's not much I can say. But how did you get into privacy consulting?
Well, I took an interest in this many years ago, and I decided to take the extreme privacy route and get as much off the grid as I could, and housing not in your name, and nothing basically pointing out where you are from a geolocation standpoint. So extreme physical privacy, digital privacy, all the rest. Permanently move over to Linux, use all the encrypted app platforms and what have you. And so I just went down the rabbit hole. I learned a whole lot. And my goal along the way was, why not teach other people and share some of this knowledge and have that, and this is really crucial, have that online only business that can fund a lifestyle that is not being an employee and all the rest. And so I managed to do that. And so it just started with an interest. And as I went along, suddenly, when you get some sales coming in for things you do, you can say, hey, I can spend my whole day, messing around with this new router and this VPN configuration. And then I can, monetize that information as well. And it kind of builds off of itself. So I was able to do that. And now, I got a newsletter, I got the podcast, I have various tutorials and such that I sell along with my colleague. And I've just kind of managed to stack that personal interest into a business, which has only reinforced that underlying interest that I had and that I took on those many years ago.
And your colleague is Urban Hacker, right?
Yes, Urban. And he's a good complement to me, much more technically savvy than I am. And so, yeah, we're a good team. And his background is in, all sorts of things. He was a video game developer at one point. He's really, he is a hacker in that sense. And he also has a background in Bitcoin. He wrote some software for a Raspberry Pi Bitcoin miner. So he's just a very well-rounded, knowledgeable person, and we make a good team, definitely.
Was that back when that would work better? A Raspberry Pi Bitcoin miner?
Yeah. Back then, yeah. So many years ago. But obviously, you do something like that, you keep up with things, and when I'm have a question about Bitcoin, Monero, whatever, I just ask him, and he's forgotten more than I've ever learned on those topics. So always useful to have a wingman who can point you in the right direction immediately.
Yeah, that's good. And for how long-ish have you been doing it professionally?
I started the show 2021. Yeah, I started the show 2021. And I won't say what I was doing before then, but that is how long I've been doing. Almost 200 episodes now. I do consultations, and those, I've been doing that kind of throughout my life to varying degrees, right? So yeah.
Do you make money off the show?
one of the key things is I don't want any sponsors. That's huge for me. So the thing that I realized was, well, I need to sell something. So I immediately wrote a book, a privacy guide, from the start that did pretty well, and it's pretty useful to get you like kind of like a business card or what have you. And then I was doing it really without much funding for a couple of years, really 2 or 3 years, and then I came together with Urban, and I said, "Listen, it's time to, like, the audience is built, the network is built. There has been much free information given, and it's time to get a little shop going and a little bit of paywalling going, and give some people some extra content." So it's been we've been running that shop, escapethetechnocracy.com, for the last year, and it has been it's been funding the endeavor. So that's great.
That's cool. What are some of the hardships you face and like pitfalls you run into as a privacy consultant?
Ooh. Probably just being creative, because everybody's coming from a different scenario, right? It really, I have a friend who would get me to do these give talks for his conferences that he does, and he would always, like, what he always wanted to know is privacy for families, right? I was like, oh God, because I want to talk about more hardcore stuff. I don't like to think about that sort of
That's the
thing.
truth, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just more like you got to meet people where they are, and where most people are is not at all where you are, and not at all where you would like them to be. And you realize also when you get into this sort of stuff that there's a lot of messed up people out there, and they have horrific situations and limitations on their physical ability and all the rest, and you kind of just have to meet them where they are and start compromising honestly, and like, okay, maybe you need an iPhone or whatever the case may be. And
It's all
we're not
about
going
the
to be so
threat
extreme
model.
here. Yeah, exactly. So that's more of the challenge, just showing some creativity and thinking through. This is another thing. I'm always thinking through all the ways that we expose ourselves. And there's just all these layers on top of layers on top of layers that you have to consider. And so that gets pretty complicated these days, especially when you realize that you're in most cars these days and they have a microphone. And it seems that all that has the capability to be transmitted back to the manufacturer of that vehicle. So what does that mean? It means no conversations in the car. It gets tricky when you start trying to be a purist.
Open the dash, take out the GPS and the microphone. But yeah, you can assume most people haven't done that.
I would assume that, yes.
Yeah, be careful. That's the thing about privacy. It's kind of like hacking. There's a cat and mouse game. You'll never know all the ways you can leak stuff. You'll always find something new. So like being very good at privacy means being very careful and thinking a lot about everything. Luckily, most people don't need to be as good as we are because of their threat model or whatever. But yeah, there was something cool I wanted to ask, but I forgot what it was. But how well are you doing? Do you got lots of clients and money coming in?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff. But
you already implied you didn't have to work in any other way.
Yeah, we're funding the endeavor. That's always been the goal, is that I would like to be able to do this full time, so that I can dedicate my time and attention and my interest in this and skills and all the rest full time. And I think the audience realizes that, and they kind of stepped up recently. I put out an episode like a couple months ago. I'm like, hey guys, I kind of need you to step up if you want this to keep going as it is. And they did. And so, yeah, it's self-sustaining at this point. So that's good to hear. And, we get a decent, followers and nice messages all the time. And so it's trending in a positive direction for sure.
Have you ever thought about ramping up into an agency, taking on more people?
At some point that sort of stuff does happen, but it's not needed at this point in time. I think it's really important for most people in business, right? The mindset is always don't have employees, don't have physical operations, have as few people as possible. So, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm editing my show. I'm getting the images. I'm doing all this stuff. And sure, I could offload some of that to others. But the moment that you offload something, there is exposure, not just from a privacy perspective, but ethical perspective, legal perspective. And so I'm much more comfortable doing as much as I can on my own until the point that I can't. And I think I can still keep going here for a while before I hit that cliff, so to speak.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you want to be as lean as possible, but I mean, scaling is good too. Like delegating and shit. Eventually, maybe you don't have to do anything. You can just
The great thing
count the money.
about selling only digital products online around the world is that, that's the ultimate scale model. So,
Right, that's true.
so it's pretty convenient in that regard. Consultation, honestly, like consultations are, when you have a course that's $200 or, a consultation that's maybe similarly priced, and one of them requires just pressing the refresh button and confirming the order versus an hour of intense, back and forth and all the rest.
Yeah.
It scales pretty well when you have products. And
Yeah,
this
you're
is,
right.
yeah. So I'm pleased.
Speaking of which, let's talk about your courses. What kinds of courses do you have?
Yeah, so escapethetechnocracy.com. We have a general privacy course that walks people through their digital privacy, Monero. We just added a 3D printed module that Urban put together. Stuff like this. We have a course on South Dakota nomad residency. Great option for Americans who are trying to basically go off the grid, but they still need that driver's license. They still need an address to give to their banks and whatever other institutions that they still may have. South Dakota has kind of been the best option, and it has not been talked about correctly. So I created a course with an expert on the topic to correct that. We have, excuse me, we have a course on using AI in a sovereign and private way. Another one of our interests. A couple books, a couple kind of crypto backup toolkits and things of the sort. We have a very long Bitcoin course that talks about sovereign and private Bitcoin use. That's also one of our original interests. So those are a few of the things that we offer on that shop.
You and Jammin should pick each other's brains. That guy's been playing around with sovereign AI shit for a while.
And what's his name?
Jammin Biconic or something. He's one of ours. We can get you linked up with that guy.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would certainly be interesting. It's yeah, absolutely. I was just playing around with some AI before we started. It's not just you can use it in a sovereign way, right? There are a lot of open source models these days. Even the recent Chinese one, the DeepSeek, right? You don't have, it's open source, so you can be running that stuff yourself. And it's a very handy tool for people who have never used it. I don't like the concept of AI in general. I do think that it eventually leads to a Terminator scenario. If such a scenario is possible, I'm not a huge fan, but since it's there, you may as well use it. And the image stuff can really help you out and really basically just completely obliterate your need for, to hire people for those sorts of things, to be perfectly honest, which I'm fine with considering my interest in not offloading. So
labor-saving device. Yeah, and if something like Terminator happens, we're just going to need another AI to fight it, right? If it's really that good.
Yeah, that's kind of been our motto for the courses. If our how am I blanking on the main guy, John from Terminator, the main resistance leader.
I can't remember either. Yeah, it's John something.
Terminate John Connor. Yeah. So okay. Well, I messed up the little little bit here. But if John Connor was alive today, he would be using his own self-hosted AI to fight against Skynet. Is kind of our thinking on the matter, and that's what persuaded me to do the course. And my colleague Urban knows, like, he's basically on top of this stuff from day one and trying to convince me of this and that. And that's kind of what convinced me is exactly that motto that I said now, is that, well, it gets to the point where you need those tools to fight against the people who have those tools. So,
yeah, for sure. And that seems to be the magic of technology. It always seems to empower the individual a little bit more than it empowers top down. Well, maybe that's just something to do with the universe. but we seem to be benefited in some, like decentralization seems to be somehow advantaged in the universe. Maybe because the universe works in a decentralized way.
Yeah, it could be. What's Paul Rosenberg likes to say that when talking about cryptography and encryption, that's there's no army that can decrypt something that is suitably encrypted, so they can throw all of their nukes and whatever against that, but that's not going to happen. So that's certainly something that leads to the strength of individuals is just encryption.
Yeah, or to compare apples to apples, there's no supercomputer in the world powerful enough to crack some basic ass encryption that you did in seconds on your shitty little computer.
Sure, absolutely.
You said something about 3D printing, a 3D printing course or module. What's that all about?
Just a little add-on for people getting introduced to the topic. That's part of our main course and something we may be doing more of. That's my colleague's specialty. So when you have him on, probably pick his brain more about some of the details of that. But obviously, that's something that people are interested in. And really what they need first is they need to get the right machine and start playing around with it and realizing that it's not amazing, but it does have its uses, kind of like AI.
Now, how do you pick course topics?
Well, depending on what is moving us really in any given month and what our specialties are. My interests are jurisdictional. So the South Dakota one, I've been talking to my friend who does this professionally, helps people with South Dakota residency. And then I decided one day, you know what, it's time to do a course. And I think the courses are a really great model because people are used to that. They're comfortable with that. They're okay paying, decent prices for this sort of thing. And it's fairly straightforward to do. Just hit record on your screen and kind of talk through it with a presentation. So depending what we're thinking about at the moment, we don't really listen to the audience that much. That's one of my philosophies as well, is don't listen to your audience at all. That's the only way to give them what they want. And otherwise, I'm like, for example, my friend Urban, we're just talking about AI, and then suddenly it clicks. It's like, okay, we need to do a course on that. Or 3D printed, we kind of had that similarly, like, hey, let's get started on that particular topic. So it's what we think people should want, right? And then they end up wanting that in most cases. And what our kind of interests are, what our specialties are, what we think is needed in the particular moment. And then we're always adding to these as well, so they don't become outdated. So I don't know. We just got to feel it out. I don't think there's a too special of a sauce to how we pick our courses.
I like that. So talk a little more about your show. What kind of stuff do you talk about on there?
Yeah, the general theme is escaping the technocracy. And there's just been a whole variety of guests. I would say, similar to the Vonu cast, right? We're just picking people's brain about philosophy, mostly revolving around individualist philosophy and what have you. And so I'll bring on people talking. I had a guy, for example, talking about the Soviet Union and really some of the details about how it worked. And I think one of my specialties is I spend a lot of time asking questions that I guess people like, because I'm just asking kind of maybe the uncommon question. I don't get bogged down. I almost never ask people like what their background is, for example. I hate those sorts of questions. So we just kind of really get into the meat of the conversation and just hit the ground running and ask some pretty wild and questions that I think should be asked, but I don't really hear that they're asked. So I try.
What's a good example of that?
So I think some of my interviews with my Indian friend Jayant Bhandari. You mean examples in
like a question, weird question that you
okay?
Like
so so there's a guy that I talked to. His name is Jayant Bhandari, and he talks about the third world and the problems of the third world. And I had, in preparing for one episode, I listened to about 40 or 50 hours of his stuff into the deep reaches of the internet, like really deep reaches, parts that most people will never find. And I encountered this one interview where he mentions in passing that he spent the day with one of Robert Mugabe's family members. Now, Robert Mugabe is was the leader of Zimbabwe, formerly known in its true name as Rhodesia. And I was like, whoa, that's a cool story. But that was not followed up on by the interviewer. So I asked this question at some point. I said, John, tell me about your time spending the day with the nephew of Robert Mugabe. And it wasn't just that question, because that itself can produce some original content. But I said, and then tell me what you extracted, like what lessons you learned from spending that day. And then so he talks about all the stuff, all the farms are destroyed, and how the guy had a sexually explicit picture of his own daughter in his house and all this other stuff. And he starts analyzing. I was like, yes, this is gold. Like, this is perfect. So that's just kind of one example. I try to do that as much as I can. I don't have as much time these days to really get into it, but I do try to have a little bit of art to the interview whenever I can.
Yeah, me too. But it mostly just amounts to asking the guest to fork over their child-born AI models for generating pictures of Robert Mugabe's new daughter. Actually, speaking of which, let me try this on you. How was your afternoon with Robert Mugabe's nephew?
Well, I can't say that I have too much of a story there, because it didn't happen and it hasn't happened. But that would be interesting for sure if that did happen. So, but just building off of that, South Africa, Southern Africa broadly, that's a very interesting portion of the world and history that I think people, especially with our inclinations, should be looking at. Because if you think about Rhodesia, for example, this is a country that said in the 60s, the UK basically says, hey, we're out. Like, we're out of all our colonies in Africa. And there goes their government, there goes everything else. And of course, immediately there is a power vacuum and all this craziness that ensues. And Russia and China and everybody else is backing these basically black communists. And then so the Rhodesians are like, what the hell? What are we doing here? So they immediately form their own government, and they are shunned by the international community. They are, in my understanding, is the most what's the word I'm looking for? The most sanctioned country in the history of the world, more than North Korea. They can't buy weapons from anybody. They can't do anything. So they do it on their own for 14 years. They hold off the combined might of basically all of Black Africa, China, and Russia for 14 years. They make their own weapons. They rebuild them. And basically, they declared what's called unilateral independence, is, I guess, what the government types call it. Other people just call it giving them the middle finger. And they lasted for 14 years in Rhodesia. So that is a heck of an interesting story for people to follow, just the tactics they use, the power vacuum, the anarchy in multiple senses of that term. Very interesting part of history and geography that people should definitely look into.
Yeah, it is. I think you're right. And there's a lot of, dare I say, willful stifling of people talking about that and thinking about that, because they just say, well, that you're just racist if you sympathize with. They did that with South Africa. Yeah. That don't talk about how it's worse after, because like apartheid is kind of beside the point. Apartheid would have probably gone away anyway with reforms, but South Africa was like one of the best parts of Africa for a long time before Mandela thing or whatever.
One of the most infuriating but also predictable and entertaining things to do is to, like, if you read the history of Africa, post-colonial Africa, and there's a good book, it's actually a neutral book, but it ends up showing just how it still shows how disturbing all of it is, because it's hard to hide it. It's called The Africans, and by David Lamb. And I've been reading this recently. It's just, oh, here, look at this dictator who was getting $2,000 haircuts from a guy he flew in from New York while a million people are, experiencing famine. But then, like, it's one, like every chapter is a one up. It's like, oh yeah, and then you have this guy and this guy and this guy. It's just total flipping chaos, right? And what these Black African leaders do is they go up to the pulpit every time, and like total psychopaths. And they always say, we're still recovering from colonization, and the white agenda is against us, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, dude, you're killing your own, like you're literally slaughtering your own people, like down the road, torturing them.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, they'll find some way to blame that on colonialism, right? And decades it goes on and on and on, and Africa continues to fall apart. But it's so predictable to see these Black African leaders go up to the pulpit and blame whoever they're going to blame, never themselves. Like they have the absolute benefit of everything in the world. It benefits them, right? And they just fit themselves perfectly into the anti-white narratives that are coursing through the veins of the West. They live on that stuff. They love it, and they're enjoying life. At least they are. So,
well, there's another way to frame it as colonialism bad, which they wouldn't want to talk about. You talked about British getting out of their colonies and stuff. Some of that was on paper. I mean, it's Russia, China, as you pointed out, but also the West sort of have their hooks in some of these dictators, and they give them foreign aid or whatever so that they can get the haircuts and the sunglasses and all that, and have slaves to whatever, fucking mine diamonds or something like Blood Diamond.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I just happen to think it would maybe it would only, if that wasn't there, it would just increase the chaos and maybe end things. Maybe the African continent would revert to its ultimate destiny of having 1/10 of its population quicker, if those donations were not going out. So
maybe. Well, there's also there are some little silver linings, right? Like I feel like, it's been a while since I looked into this. I think it was Rwanda that was sort of picking up for a while after the most recent war or whatever. They had like a freer market regime or something, and so they experienced some economic growth. Somalia is a country where, after the collapse of the central government, it's arguably gotten a little less shitty. It's weird. You got pirates, but you also got fiber optics. It's kind of cool.
It's interesting. Unfortunately, you're just, another uncomfortable question about the IQ of people around the world. And it's just, it's not a matter of anarchy or free markets fixing the people or anything like that. There's a certain threshold where those things can even kick in, and you can understand the non-aggression principle and really intuit that at a deep level. So I think, unfortunately, those principles will only be reserved for a select people on the globe.
Huh. So you're like a race realist. You're you're kind of like a white supremacist or something. No offense. Is there like a more politically correct term I could use for that?
Hey, I'm just telling you what I've what I and many other people have intuited, and just looking at the facts here and suggesting that if you at a certain threshold of, let's say, IQ, you simply cannot conceptualize things like doing harm to others and all the rest, and it kind of turns you into a bit of a psychopath, to be perfectly honest. So I'm just spitting some facts here.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I say nigger on this show all the time, but it's okay because I'm black, as far as anyone knows. Look at the logo, black and red.
Well, I've always identified as black, especially when it gets me privileges, so no problem at all.
Speaking of which, this is a great time to call in at PAZNIA.com/call and say nigger to Gabriel Custodiet or whatever other disruptive thing you want to do.
Well, and to be fair, like I'm not going to go into the details of this, but I did grow up in the third world, and I've witnessed all this stuff firsthand.
Oh yeah.
And so we're talking about willful abuse to animals. We're talking about family structures that do not exist and did not exist, frankly, until the West invaded these parts of the world. We're talking about things that I've witnessed firsthand, and then further study has kind of reinforced a lot of this stuff. So I'm always open to changing my mind, and I hope my mind will be changed, but I just have to look at the things as I see them and act accordingly.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we'll talk more about race stuff in a bit. It's kind of one of the things I'm less interested in, but because I'm down with people who are racist and people who don't like racism. I'm also kind of down with communists. We talked a little about anarcho-communists earlier, and I kind of think we could be friends, at least with the ones who don't want to force their way on other people. Some ANCOMs are all right, I think.
I've spent a lot of time reading communist literature, and I think there's some interesting and very useful critiques of how things are, certainly. I just don't like a lot of the solutions.
Yeah, well, they don't work, but sometimes you got to let people try it first, and then.
But what works for one country does not work for another, and that's kind of to return to my point that what you need as a let's say an African country is a heavy hand, unfortunately, because otherwise it's going to be total chaos. And hopefully you have that heavy hand from somebody who, like a British ruler or a Belgian ruler or something like this. I think that's honestly, if you're just being honest with yourself, that's probably your best hope as a sub-Saharan African.
How about a decentralized market for protection companies?
So you've just said a bunch of words that people would not be able to even conceptualize south of the sub-Saharan desert. I'm sorry to say.
Well, they don't have to conceptualize it. That's what the guns are for. And that's what the heavy hand is for.
There you go. So,
well, let's talk for a sec about, remember, folks, you can call in PAZNIA.com/call. You can talk to me and Gabriel right now. Let's talk a little bit about nuclear war survival, because I think you touched on that not long ago, right?
Well, we have, so here's another good strategy. You have a shop, you have a network, you sell things that other people have created. My friend Stephen Harris is a certified genius on a number of topics. This guy's amazing, and he studied for 8 years with a very knowledgeable guy in nuclear energy, basically. And he created a course, and he has co-authored essentially a book. Which, if you go to Amazon right now and you search for something like nuclear survival, it is nuclear survival. I just searching for nuclear survival in Amazon, and one of the first things that come up is a book called Nuclear War Survival Skills by Crescent Kearney and Stephen Harris. Well, I know Stephen Harris, and so that's his product. I don't want to try to give people advice about surviving nuclear war. There's a handful of people out there who don't even believe that there are nuclear weapons. I got a couple emails about that, but assuming that they do exist, we sell information on protecting yourself. That book is available for free in one of the older editions, so people can track it down. Basically, I'll just point out a couple things because I don't want to totally dodge the answer. One of the main things is, the nuclear blast isn't really going to harm most people. That's pretty contained, and it's really the fallout that is slowly going to make its way to where you are. That's going to be a problem. And there are pretty simple ways to avoid that in the initial days and such, which is really what you want to be doing. There are pretty simple ways to do that, as long as you're prepared. You have some tools, you have a place that you can go, even if that's just being underground where the dirt is going to block a ton of that. So it's really just a matter of taking this seriously and then taking some basic precautions. All right, you can read the first 30 pages of that book is what Stephen Harris recommends, and you'll be in good shape. So something for people to think about, especially in our crazy world where, speaking of psychopathic leaders, you're just a couple button presses away from a lot of this nonsense. And I don't think we're going any further away from that. I think there's just going to be more and more of this stuff as we go along.
That's for damn sure. Yeah, and you're right about that. That the blast is not a big deal, and there's also a bunch of other bullshit out there about nuclear winter, blah blah blah. It's not real. And it's true that the fallout is a bigger threat, though I would go further than that and say an even bigger threat than the fallout is what happens, secondary effects that happen because of the EMPs that have to come in the first wave just before the first nukes as you know, to disable some ECMs, electronic countermeasures, and things like that. Blowing every transformer in the fucking power grid, let's say in North America, the power grid's not hardened at all. This could also happen because of a solar flare or whatever. You don't need nukes, but that could lead to, according to some estimates, a bunch of people starving. You can feed 10% of the population, something like that, because of inability to grow more food or get it to where people want to eat it. And like, so to me, the sort of Mad Max scenario of people have to kind of kill each other to survive is a bigger threat than even the fallout itself. So the shelter's got to be hidden. That's where guys like you and I come in, keeping things hidden.
That's a big part of it. You know, you can build your shelter in a private way, of course. You can have a bunker. There are ways to do this privately. Talk to people on the show about that. A guy who actually goes around the U.S. doing things for people. So yeah, absolutely. And preparedness is just something that I think makes sense when you understand how the world operates. So absolutely.
Remember, folks, you can call in any old time now. Gabriel and I are going to run out of things to fucking talk about, either right on time or too early. So please call in, and you can prank call us. And just think of the most offensive thing to say. Come in at PAZNIA.com/call. Say it to Gabriel, not me.
And
now,
by the way, audience, I was joking about all the IQ stuff. All right, continue.
He was not joking. You heard him. You heard him straight up. This guy is, please, I don't know if you know this, but all my listeners are people of color. This is a people of color only.
Well, and I'm one of them. And what I'll say to people is, go to the show, Watchman Privacy, track down some of my conversations with Giant Bandari. This guy really changed my mind. And the way he talks about the infinite chasm between the first and the third world is certainly worth listening to. That's what I'll say.
That's sorry, wait. How do you find that episode of the show? What's his name?
His name is Giant Bandari. That's JAYANTBHANDARI. Giant Bandari. I've done a number of episodes with him. A couple others that I haven't published yet because I haven't gotten the courage to do so yet. But those are very interesting shows. Giant Bandari on Watchman Privacy podcast.
See, maybe the problem with people in the third world is just that they have too many letters in their names. What if it's not a genetic thing? What if it's just
I think you're right. The H doesn't need to be there in Bandari. That is one problem. But I spelled this name so many times that for me, it's second nature at this point.
See, there's a lot of confounding variables, you know, genetics, economy, letters in your name, so forth.
But yeah, so but look, the third world, since we're trying to fill some airtime here, the third world is a place that you can go for more freedom, potentially, right? Potentially, depending on things. Depending where you go, it might be more freedom, or you might have an AK-47 put in your face. But the third world is always going to be lacking behind in terms of the surveillance, right? We think of Mexico during the, a few years ago, it was a very open place. I actually went to Mexico during those years of the crazy nonsense. And, I was like, hey, this is free, but I don't want to be here. This place sucks. Total shit show, if I'm being honest. But that's kind of what you find in the third world is if you can stomach it, if you can maybe get a little bit of an enclave, just being perfectly honest, you can get some tax advantage. Obviously you can, bribing is fairly common in those places, which to be fair, it's a pretty fair system, all things considered. So yeah, there are advantages to the third world, and it is something that freedom-seeking people should be seeking out. If you're upset with your police in your first world country, if you don't like being grilled in interrogation going into Canada or Australia, then you could be considering, going to the third world. There's plenty of opportunity to scrape out your little corner of freedom in the world, in the third world.
It's true, yeah. It's a double-edged sword. The first world countries have more developed markets, but they also have bigger states because they have a slice of a bigger pie. And then in the third world, they kind of killed the golden goose. So like they might have worse laws on the books, but they've kind of stifled the white market, so they can't enforce laws that well, and everyone breaks the law in a third world country. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
And of course, if you're, I think actually giving bribes in other countries is illegal. If you're, if you live in some of these Western countries, that's the craziness of the laws. But
I think it's illegal in the third world too. It's just that it's not enforced.
Well, yeah, so one of the things is, and Giant Bandari talks. I asked him about some of the strategies of bribing. You don't want to just go and just bribe anybody. You want to be careful how you phrase it, right? It's like, can I pay for this fee right here? Can I pay for this fine right now? That's probably the best and safest line that you can use.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. How about this one? Remember, folks, you can call in PAZNIA.com/call. Do you know much about decentralized cell systems of organization, kind of like you might have for a spy network or an insurgency?
Not too much. That's something that I think Rayo and others would know more about. So no, don't really get involved with a ton of that. So yeah, no. Don't
come on,
much about it.
This is the Insurrectionary Agorism podcast.
I'm my own cell, so I travel around too much. That's one of my problems is I really haven't settled anywhere yet. So I'm traveling around so much that there's just a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, I can't have this equipment. I can't do that. I can't do this. Hard to make friends in person, just because I'm traveling so much. And this is one of those things that would fall under that category of not having much experience with.
That's true. Yeah, you might want to pick somewhere to settle down a little bit, because shit's getting a little hairy this decade. I want to think about it.
Well, that's what I did last decade, and it didn't happen. So I'm a little bit more fast and loose now, where I'm like, you know what, maybe it's not a bad idea to be in the stock market in this particular thing. Maybe it's not a bad idea to explore the world now. Because you get into these doom Telegram groups and such, especially if it's full of boomers. And this is something I've noticed about boomers is they love the doom porn. And mostly it's because they're really dissatisfied with their lives. They're like, hey, I messed up my life. I didn't do what I wanted. I just want it all to end. And I want it to end for everybody. Just to kind of be realistic about it, they're really like that, I think. And I've spent too much time with those kind of people where I'm like, the world has not ended. The economy has not crashed. Things are still going along. Yes, I understand there are underlying problems. I'm not just going to waste my time, off grid here and not making money, not seeing the world. For example, I've been spending some time in Europe. People are like, oh yeah, it's collapsing. Yeah, that's why I want to be here right now before it collapses. So there's something to that as well.
Yeah, well, there's truth to both sides. I mean, you can make money and be in the real world, but also have somewhere to bug out to or something and have friends and stuff. But yeah, I agree that I think boomers, maybe they had it a bit easy or whatever in their day. And whatever, how people, I think it happens to all of us as you get older. You say, oh, kids these days and the world's going to shit. And everyone always says that, even as the world gets better.
It's true. And these people who I've been listening to have been calling for economic collapse, global collapse. What is it? Peter Schiff's book about 2013. He was like, yeah, that's when it's all going to fall apart. Well, it hasn't. And if you were in the stock market at that time, like he recommended you weren't, you've lost out. Like those people have something to answer for. The Austrian contrarian investors have something to answer for in that period of time. If you were in gold, throughout that period, gold has gone up recently, but before like a year ago, gold was, you were losing money. So I don't want to live like that at this point, but I'm sure at some point, once I've seen my share of things and done my travel, that I'll become just like those people that I'm criticizing right now.
Yeah. Well, just treat it like, you talked about creativity as a privacy consultant. Let's say you're playing Minecraft and a lot of the land in your Minecraft server is claimed by an organization that demands taxes from the other users and otherwise oppresses them with all kinds of rules. And some of those Minecraft players, including you, are violent extremist market anarchists or insurrectionary agorists, as I've been calling it. How do you think, like, use your privacy consultant brain, how do you think these insurrectionary agorists would best organize protection companies to wage an insurgency against the government in Minecraft?
Good question. Well beyond my pay grade. That's for sure.
It was worth a try, or worth a shot.
It probably was, yeah.
What do you have planned next?
Well, we're gonna keep pumping out the show. A lot of people like the show and the guests that we get on, and the advice that we give. We have a newsletter that's ongoing every 2 weeks. We pump out like a 15 to 20 page newsletter. We're always experimenting with different tech and tools and privacy strategies and what have you. Let's see, what am I working on just at this moment? I've got some Faraday bags that I'm pitting against each other. I've got a 3D printer that I'm going to put through the paces here. I've got some travel to do, not in my name, and some strategies to test there. I've got a dash cam. That's something I've been getting into recently. Not a privacy strategy, but does have some useful kind of consequences for the chaotic traffic world we live in, and all the theft and the rest. So I'm starting to get into dash cams now for vehicles offline, of course, and not pointed at the driver. So yeah, just keep testing tools for people's productivity, their privacy, freedom, and just putting everything through the paces. Keep having intellectual conversations. We're producing some, good courses, as I say, that's so people can get more into depth about particular technologies and tools, and just keep going here with all that stuff. Do a little bit of world travel. I like to report on different different regions, right? How difficult is it to get into this country? What is the surveillance like? Is there facial recognition going on? How bad are the cities? Is the migration as bad as people say? All those sorts of things. So I'm just trying to give people an accurate view of the world, and then some of the tools for them to fit into that world. I think we got some AI clusters that we're going to test here when we get our hands on some of these 5,000 NVIDIA series chips. So yeah, that's a little bit of the stuff on the plate at the moment.
Why don't you try hopping over a border illegally instead of going through the checkpoint? Report back on that.
You could one could do that. One could do that. What I don't want to do is to, especially being a public figure, is I have to be careful a little bit about the stuff I say and do, because I could do all sorts of things and I could talk about all sorts of things, but there's that, and there's also just making your life a total misery. There's a guy, his name is Amir Taki. Not sure if you're familiar with him. He was basically one of the earliest guys in coin joins and Bitcoin. He had this early privacy wallet that was doing a coin join. It was called Dark Wallet. And he's like a hardcore guy, and he just quit one day. He's just like, you know what? I'm going to go fight ISIS. And so he went and he did it. And it's a cool story. He's obviously pursuing something he believes in. But then the guy has a serious interrogation and hassle anywhere he goes in the world now, whenever he enters an airport, and he travels a lot. So, you really have to think a little bit whether you want to whether you're willing to embrace a lot of those inconveniences, depending how far
that's
down
what the different IDs are for.
Publicly.
Yeah, you can just pay someone to give you a different passport in one of your third world countries, right?
Well, yeah, tell me all about it. How does that work?
You just need to know the right person. Networking.
All right, networking 101.
And now you mentioned dash cams. I've been feeling like the right way to do dash cams is you want full disk encryption, right? Have you put thought into that?
That would be an option. That would definitely be an option. Now, if you're pointing, yeah, I've really got to think through this, right? Because there's the whole, obviously you don't want things uploading to the cloud necessarily. Well, maybe you could get it uploading in a different way. The problem is a lot of these dash cams are really proprietary, most of the stuff. So there's only so much tinkering you can do. But yeah, that'll be part of the equation for sure when testing, is figuring out
All
how
you
we
need
can
is some sort of like let's say a single board computer, maybe a Raspberry Pi, and then a camera, like maybe a USB camera or something. You plug into that. You just have full disk encryption.
Oh,
or
you're
whatever.
talking about making your own.
Yeah, just build your own. Wouldn't be that hard.
Potentially, yeah, but you know,
And you could sell them.
there's just not enough time, and not enough hours in the day. There's some things.
We'll get
Here's
Jamin to do it.
There you go.
We call the
There are some
Ghost
things
Dash.
where it's like build your own whatever, or self-hosting and all this kind of stuff. It's like, sure, you could spend X amount of time figuring this stuff out, and then realizing there's certain limitations to it, and then you're responsible for all the upkeep, which is always the biggest hassle, and why most self-hosting and such fails. Or you could just piggyback off of something that's kind of like 99% there. I usually opt for those options, but I do respect the people who are in the trenches building things by themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a lot of research though, or like just no one's making anything that's even that. Like, I mean, for me personally, like fuck a dash cam that doesn't have full disk encryption. So like, all someone has to do is pick up the device and then figure out everywhere I've been driving. That's not good.
That's not good. No. So you want to be careful what you're doing with the micro SD cards. Now, what could you do while working within the system? You could have a micro SD card that only shows, that's small enough it's only showing your latest 10 minutes, which could be good because if you get into an accident, right, it's probably going to happen right then that you're going to need it. So you could do something like that. You could just say, hey, I always remove the SD card when I leave the car. I take it out of the car, the whole thing. There are other things you could do without,
Well, it could also be like a bludgy pulled you over because of something they thought they might have seen you do in the last 10 minutes. Then they take the micro SD card, and the last 10 minutes is enough
to convict you or to
exonerate. Or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, look, it can certainly work both ways. I know people who've had the micro SD cards in their cameras. Let's say their home cameras, they want it offline. But if somebody goes up there and just jacks the camera and takes it, then they can access that stuff. So
right,
yeah, it's
you need encryption.
It's not just it's not something that you do have to think it out. It's a whole process. It's a whole process that you have to think out with these things.
I think full disk encryption's the answer. But
how would you do that though on a dash cam that you buy from Best Buy? How would you do that?
I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would just, because I mean, I don't think it's that hard to. I mean, of course, this is from the standpoint of being someone who's kind of good with computers. I don't think it's that hard to take an SBC and just install fucking Debian or something with full disk encryption, and then do whatever you want with it. And of course, that could be sold to somebody else, or someone could pay somebody to help them do that if it was too hard for them. But yeah, that's what I would go with.
Well,
these things are all just computers, right?
Yeah, feel free to go through it. I'd be happy to see how you go about it, for sure.
Let's do it. So you're clearly better than me at running a show and doing interviews. So what do you think I should ask you? Why don't you ask yourself a question before you go?
Okay.
Put him on the spot. Really, I want you to get Gabriel Custodiet. Get him real good.
Here I'm the guest, and I'm having to do the interview as well. Gosh,
I'm really lazy, dude. This show, I put very little effort into it.
Okay. Well, more information, and then I'll answer the question. What do you think your audience is looking for? What sorts of things? How advanced are they? Well, first of all, how advanced are the listeners 1 to 10?
With 5 being like a normal person?
Yes.
7.5.
And how are they more interested in physical or digital privacy?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's probably a pretty even mix of both.
Yeah. What about South Dakota? Why don't I ask myself a question?
They're familiar with that.
Okay. Well, if they're familiar with that, then they're probably familiar with Monero and Bitcoin
Oh, yeah.
privacy. They're probably familiar with private accommodation. They're probably familiar with Linux and encryption and password managers and 2FA and VPNs and Tor and self-hosting.
Well, what are your thoughts on private accommodation? I feel like a lot of Vonu ones are just like, whatever, I'll live in a van or a homestead. Give them something else on private accommodation, maybe.
Well, you can fully take advantage of all of the convenience of the world, right? Which is hotels, Airbnb, and everything in between. You just have to find a way to do that where that's not in your name. Now, all these morons who run these companies and what have you, they want to collect your information. Maybe it's because there's some moron in government that thinks that KYC is necessary for the greater good and all that. And so you need somebody to jump on the KYC grenade for you, or you need them to excuse you from the KYC. So there's no real easy option that works every time, but you just have to obviously feel it out. You go to a hotel. Yeah, we're going to need your ID, sir. Oh yeah, I forgot that. Can I bring it to you later? Michael Bazzell talks about having the lanyard with your alias name on it. You just hold that up like, hey, this is what I've got for now, right? You're paying there with your in cash, or usually they want a credit card. Maybe it's like a privacy.com card or something like this, which has at least a layer of privacy. As long as you can pay them and get out of that kind of scenario and bring it back later, so to speak, quote unquote, you've gotten through that situation. Be flexible, be ready to go to a different hotel, all that sort of stuff. Airbnb, great option. You just can't use it really with your own identity because they need something. So, you have a friend who will let you use their account. Do you have a collective group that has a joint Airbnb account? These are all things that you can merchants. There you go. So, and you need to have this stuff set up ready to go, because the moment that you're like, oh, I need the Airbnb now, right? The trips now, I need to do it. I need the hotel now. You're not going to do it because it's a little bit of work. You haven't thought it through. So plan for these things now. Plan for your next trip now, and have somebody to jump on the KYC grenade for you. Have all your plans, how you're going to interact with people. You're not just going to limit yourself to one hotel. Maybe it's going to be 10 hotels that you try. Maybe not 10, but like 5 before you can get into one. And maybe, you just fit out your vehicle so that you can sleep in there more often and you don't have to. I've done that. Like I drove 32 hours straight one time because I was like, I don't want to deal with the KYC stuff. And so I just drove 32 hours straight. So thank you, KYC, for making us safer. But
good job, Gabriel. Good question. Good answer. Thank you so much for humoring us, for gracing us with your presence on our shitty little show. Plug everything that you want to plug.
I just want to make it clear that I'm a stand-up privacy consultant. Everything I said about the third world was just a joke. It's not. It's not true. Don't send me messages about that. That was just a joke. It was just a thought experiment. So, Watchman Privacy podcast. If you want to listen, we got a whole lot of episodes. Go back to the beginning. Just watch that. That's all free. And that's all I'm going to pitch. Watchman Privacy podcast. You can find that on your podcast player. You can find that on the Rumble, YouTube, all the rest. And you'll find your way from there. So that's really all I got.
Yeah, that's right, guys. He's a stand-up privacy consultant. And you don't want that. We don't want that around here. We want the one that says nigger. So you're not going to go to him. You're going to go to me. You're going to go to vonupodcast.com/CD and talk to me on Session or SimpleX. Gabriel doesn't even have a Session or SimpleX. He wouldn't talk to me there.
It's true. I don't really care about privacy. So definitely go to Vonu instead.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the celebrity testimonial. We're going to play that clip on future shows. And you can join us next week at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And I'm going to talk about network privacy, dark nets, maybe cryptocurrency VPNs, and the big dApps of tomorrow, which I'll just leave that vague for now. Self-Liberation Saturday will keep going for another 4 or 5 hours to 8 or 9 p.m. Central. So don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us, Gabriel, and putting up with me.
VonuPodcast.com.
Yeah, man. Over and out. Stay frosty out there.